Let me introduce you to Karen. Karen is 58 years old. She's worked her entire adult life, 35 years of alarm clocks, commutes, and office birthday cake she didn't ask for. She followed the rules. She maxed her 401k when she could. She didn't blow money on a boat. She didn't go to Vegas every year. She did everything right. Karen has $28,000 saved for retirement, and Karen is absolutely cooked. Because here's the thing, nobody tells you when you're 25 and HR is sliding 401k enrollment forms across the table like it's a golden ticket. $28,000 sounds like a lot of money until you do the math. And once you do the math, you will never sleep the same way again. So let's do the math together. If Karen retires at 65 and lives until 85, which is now completely average, she has 20 years to stretch that $28,000. That works out to $14,000 a year, or roughly $1,166 a month, before taxes, before healthcare, before inflation, before anything. The federal poverty line for a single adult is $15,060 per year. Karen spent 35 years working and ended up just barely above the poverty line in retirement. And the worst part? Karen isn't the exception. Karen is the majority, because the median retirement savings for Americans between 55 and 64 is just $87,000, not $87,000, not $8.7 million, $87,000. The median person approaching retirement has saved enough money to retire comfortably for approximately 4 years. So how did we end up here? How did the wealthiest country in the history of the world build a retirement system where the average person is one bad decade away from eating gas station sushi in their 70s? The answer starts in 1978, and it starts with a mistake. In 1978, Congress passed the Revenue Act, which included a tiny provision buried inside it called Section 401k. It was written as a tax loophole for corporate executives, a way for high earners to defer compensation and reduce their taxable income. Nobody thought it would become the cornerstone of American retirement. It was literally an afterthought buried inside a larger piece of tax legislation that nobody was reading. Then, in 1980, a benefits consultant named Ted Benna noticed the provision and realized it could be used to create employee savings plans. He pitched the idea to his client. His client said no, so he did it for his own company instead. The IRS signed off. And just like that, America accidentally stumbled into a retirement system designed by a guy whose original client didn't even want it. Think about that. The vehicle that 60 million Americans are depending on to fund their retirement was an accident invented inside a tax footnote. The original architect of the 401k has since publicly called it a monster. That should make you at least slightly uncomfortable. Before 401ks existed, most Americans with full-time jobs were covered by what's called a defined benefit pension plan. You work for a company for 30 years. The company calculates your final salary and years of service, and then every month until you die, they send you a check. You didn't have to understand asset allocation. You didn't have to pick between a Roth or a traditional account. You just showed up, worked, and collected. But then corporations figured something out. Pensions are expensive. Pensions are a guaranteed liability on the balance sheet that lasts as long as the employee lives. 401ks, on the other hand, are cheap. The company matches a small percentage, writes it off as a business expense, and the risk of actually funding retirement gets quietly transferred to the employee. It was one of the cleanest corporate handoffs in modern history, and nobody really noticed until it was already done. By 2023, only 15% of private sector workers still had access to a traditional pension. In 1983, that number was 62%. In 40 years, the guaranteed retirement income for the average American worker was essentially abolished. Not through some dramatic political moment, not through a crisis or a vote anyone remembers. Just through corporate HR policy decisions, one company at a time, spread across 4 decades. And here's the gut punch. The entire 401k system only works if you do everything right. You have to start early. You have to contribute consistently. You have to not panic sell during crashes. You have to pick the right funds. You have to not cash it out when you switch jobs. And you have to earn enough money in the first place to actually save any of it. That's a long list of conditions. And most Americans fail at least 2 or 3 of them, not because they're irresponsible, because the system was never designed for them in the first place. Now let's talk about the number you actually need. Most financial planners use the 4% rule. The idea is simple. If you withdraw no more than 4% of your portfolio per year, your investments should theoretically grow fast enough to sustain you for 30 years. So if you want $6,000 a year in retirement, you need $1.5 million saved. If you want $8,000 a year, you need $2 million. If you want $100,000 a year, which isn't lavish, that's just a halfway decent middle-class retirement, you need $2.5 million. The median American near retiree has $87,000. That gap between what people have and what they need isn't a rounding error. It's a canyon. And standing between that canyon and total financial freefall is Social Security. Which brings us to the part of this video where things get even more uncomfortable. Social Security was never supposed to be your entire retirement. It was designed in 1935 as a safety net, supplemental income for people who had outlived their savings. The average benefit today sits around $1,907 a month. That's roughly $2,900 a year. And for about 40% of retired Americans, it accounts for more than half their total income. For 15% of retired Americans, it is essentially their only income. And here's what nobody wants to say out loud at the dinner table. Social Security is running out of runway. The Social Security Trust Fund is projected to be depleted by 2033. Not gone entirely. Payroll taxes would still cover about 79 cents on every dollar owed, but that missing 21% would land hardest on the people who can least afford it. The Karens of the world, the ones who did everything right and still ended up with $87,000 and a retirement that barely clears the poverty line. So what do you actually do about this? Because this isn't a doom video, it's a math video. And math, unlike feelings, has solutions. Start now, no matter how embarrassingly late you think it is. The math on compound interest doesn't care how many times you've procrastinated. Starting at 45 beats, starting at 55. Starting at 55 beats, not starting. Time is still working, just slower than you'd like. Max out tax-advantaged accounts before anything else. A 401k with an employer match is a guaranteed 50% to 100% return on your first dollar contributed. That beats every ETF, every stock pick, and every Discord crypto tip. Leaving employer match on the table is one of the most expensive financial decisions a person can quietly make, and most people make it without realizing it. Know your number and work backwards. Figure out the annual income you need in retirement. Multiply it by 25. That's your target. Write it somewhere you'll actually see it and build your savings plan around hitting it. Do not cash out your 401k when you switch jobs. Around 40% of workers cash out their retirement accounts during job transitions. They pay income tax on it, take a 10% early withdrawal penalty, and blow up years of compounding in a single afternoon decision. Don't be that person. If you're self-employed, a solo 401k lets you contribute up to $69,000 per year as of 2024. Most self-employed people have no idea this exists. Now you do. There is no excuse. Here's what's hard to sit with after you put all of this together. We built an entire retirement system on the assumption that every individual would become their own pension fund manager, that they'd understand compound interest, asset allocation, inflation adjustment, sequence of returns risk, and withdrawal rate strategy, all while working full-time, raising a family, and trying to figure out what's actually happening to the economy on a week-to-week basis. That was never a fair ask, and the results are exactly what you'd expect from an unfair ask that went unquestioned for 40 years. The median near retiree has $87,000. The number they actually need is somewhere between $1.5 million and $2.5 million depending on the lifestyle they want. And the one thing that was supposed to bridge that gap, Social Security, is slowly being chipped away by demographics, politics, and math that doesn't care about anyone's feelings. This isn't pessimism, it's arithmetic. And the first step to solving a problem is being honest that the system you inherited wasn't built for you. It was built for corporate balance sheets and tax efficiency. You just happened to be standing in the room when they handed out the responsibility. So I want to hear where you land on this. Do you think the 401k system is still salvageable with better financial literacy and higher contribution limits? Do you think we need to rethink pensions and shift the retirement risk back to employers where it used to be? Or do you think this is already too far gone and we're watching a slow-motion retirement crisis that no policy tweak can fix in time? Drop your take in the comments below, because this is the kind of conversation that actually matters, a lot more than whatever meme coin is having a moment this week.